Welcome, Amanda, to the Root of Our Health. This is such a pleasure to have you on. I cannot wait to dig in a little bit further.
Elizabeth, thank you for having me. Any opportunity to speak about midlife is really exciting for me. So I'm really happy to be here.
Great. And so am I. I can't wait. But first, before we get into the juicy stuff, although, this is also juicy, would love to know more about you and your background. So can you tell us a little bit more about you?
Yes, absolutely. So I have my doctorate. I am a clinical psychologist for over 20 years. And I got to the point where after enough time in private practice, I felt that there was so much more available. And I wanted often to lean in and suggest things to clients. And in traditional psychotherapy, you don't do that. You're just the blank slate. So about 2 years ago, I decided to exit the profession officially and start this transformational online space for women, particularly in midlife, because I was so thoroughly enjoying my midlife experience. And I saw so many women in my periphery who were not. And so I decided to exit traditional psychotherapy, go into online offerings. I'm also a wife of 26 years. I'm a mother to 5 children, ages 23 to 15. And yes, I've lived 8 different places in the country. I love adventuring. I love traveling. I love meeting new people and all types of people. And we have a beautifully colorful family. I'm also a mother to a Black son, 2 Black sons, a brown son, a transgender son, a gay son. So we have adoption, we have biological. So I really come at life through a lens and perspective that has a very wide range, that operates as its baseline is diversity for me.
That's beautiful. And that's what it's about, right? I think in general, life is about not only just living it to the fullest, but inclusion, right? Inclusion. So it's not just, I'm here living straightforward. This is my life. This is what I'm going to do, this and that, but it's more or less kind of encompassing those around us into our life, right?
Yes, absolutely. I have always been a believer of building bigger tables to include more people. And I even have a tattoo that says Ubuntu, and it's an African Zulu term, and it means I am because you are. And this idea that we cannot exist without one another, and that it actually gets to be so much more beautiful when we all come together everyone has different strengths.
Yeah.
And rather than being in competition with one another, it's like, okay, you bring this piece and I bring this piece. And what is possible when we come together as community is so much more beautiful and powerful than we as individuals.
I completely agree. And I'm just curious, have you always been like this? Has it been, in your childhood, this is who you are in the past?
I didn't grow up with this being a value per se. I mean, I have a great family, but it was not that way. If anything, it was more closed-minded, and it never sat right with me. It always really hurt my heart. And in grad school, I was living in Los Angeles, and my opportunities, my exposure to diversity just exploded my heart wide open in my early 20s. And it really set the tone for the woman I wanted to be in the world and the mother I wanted to be in the world. And I'm so thankful for that experience, because I often wonder, had I not had that, what would have happened?
Right, exactly. And that's just, it's amazing that you just realized it, right? It's just, you had it inside you, and you knew this is something that I want to live. This is something that, is important.
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
Yes.
So we know why midlife women. What is it about midlife women that you are looking to, I don't want to say help, but kind of transition, kind of, change or eliminate those barriers? What is it that you want to focus on?
Yeah, well, it's really I think at the root of it, it's wanting to have bigger conversations that will inspire different ways of thinking. For me, because myself and many of my closest girlfriends are living this unbelievably gorgeous, luxurious space. I'm going to be 50 in a few months. And I look around at so many women in midlife who are having a very opposite experience and looking at it through a lens that I want to say to them, that is not the only way to look at this. There are so many more options. But I think in a world and in a culture where we have focused on women over 40, over 45 as kind of like the old spinster, or she's no longer pretty, she's no longer fertile. What does she really bring to the table? She's just like on her way to like getting older and more like a crone. Mm-hmm. I am here to revolutionize the way we even talk about, like, I would love before I am off this earth, or at least before my daughter's off this earth, to see the words crisis, like tied to midlife, not even in the dictionary, like not even something we talk about anymore. You know, we talk about men getting older and they are revered for aging. They are considered silver foxes, and women are punished for being human. And so for me, I really want to illuminate this time in life for women, because I feel with all these decades of wisdom, we are just beginning. There is so much to offer the world. And I just really want to infuse that message so that women feel the possibility of being able to claim something new in their midlife. This is not an end. This is a beginning.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. Yes. Amen. And you know what? Happy birthday. Happy pre-birthday. I know it's early, but
thank you.
Yes. And yes. I firmly believe that in my heart, in my soul. When I turned 40, it was literally like a switch that just flipped. And it wasn't to where it was like, oh my God, I turned 40. Wah, wah. It was more or less like, oh my God, I turned 40. Let's see what else I can do. Yes. And it was, taking on, doing my own thing, creating my own, business and podcast, and what else can I do? So yes. And it's mentally, physically, emotionally, we have to crush that stigma. Yes. Of over the hill, of again, things are going to happen to you, so you might as well just give up. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen that way. And we hear so many stories, so many people, especially women over 40, who are starting their own thing, who are creating, who are making an impact, who are just doing that in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. So I exactly. Amen to that and then some. So I just want to kind of transition into, let's talk about sex.
Oh my God. One of my favorite topics,
and exactly that. It is something that, and I know the listeners who are going to be listening are going to be like, oh my God, but this is the reason why we need to talk about it, right?
Absolutely.
It is truly taboo, especially not only for women in general, but for women over 40 in midlife, who are kind of like saying, oh, well, now it's dried up and shriveled up and that's it. I can't, A, B, and C, whatever it is. Personally, it is prime time.
It is prime time for sure.
So tell me about how you infuse this, talking about sex. What are your thoughts and feelings about sex in midlife?
Elizabeth, I literally love this question. You and I could probably talk about this for hours, because I see your, yes. But you're right. I'm so happy you asked me this question. It's so important. I feel like we have to bring it out of the shadows and stop feeling shame about it. It is the most primal, beautiful human right given to us. There would be no existence of humanity if we were not being able to procreate and talk about sex and pleasure. And for women, in midlife and beyond, if we are just like anything in life, right? If we keep hearing a message that says, when you get to this age, it's going to dry up, you're going to shrivel up, you're not going to have any interest anymore. I really, truly believe if that's what we water our minds with, and we keep feeding that to our brains, that is actually what we begin to feel. if you have a different storyline, if you're in my world where we talk about how delicious and amazing it gets to be, not in service to anyone else, but for yourself first and foremost. And it is about a very deep, beautiful, holy connection to your womb, to your divinity, to your feminine, to being a woman, an art form that we do not teach. Because in my spaces, in my workshops, in my masterminds, and with my one-on-one clients, the work I teach opens a portal to something so holy inside of women, because we are expecting women in a world where we have told women forever, since one of the first stories in time, right, that they were whores if they had any desire, that they were not good mothers, they were not good wives. We go to CVS to pick up a box of pads or tampons. We are reminded unconsciously by the 2 shelves in every drugstore of how bad we smell, all of this messaging. And we wonder why women may be struggling with desire. And then we don't ever really teach, we as women don't often, we get embarrassed, so we don't take ownership and teach our partners, our lovers, what we need. We lay back in the bed like a little baby princess instead of being the queen who says, come here, let me show you what I want. We can't show people what we want when we don't know ourselves. So it begins with us. We are so many millions of miles away from this, but we have to start with our own bodies, our own pleasure, our own exploration. And it gets to be, it's so much bigger than a few minute conversation, right? It's so much deeper. The work is a journey, because there's a lot of unlearning and unconditioning we have to do for women to be comfortable in their bodies. And I'll tell you, like I said, I'm almost 50, and I've never had such high, it's really, to me, it's all about desire and turn on for being alive, like looking out at the water and the sun and the people and the smells and the flowers. I am, from the moment I wake up in the morning, beginning through a lens of turn on, finding the goodness. When I'm able to do that for myself, I see it everywhere else in the world. I walk around turned on for being alive, which then translates into turned on for my own divinity, my own humanity. When you're operating at that kind of a level, we're not talking about body on body sex anymore. We're talking about, I am juicy and alive because I exist, because I get this privilege and I get to share this with another human. Now, that other human, that other lover has to be able to receive that kind of an energy. And what happens in that space, there is nothing like it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. I think, if anything, being over 40 in midlife, we know our bodies more than ever before, right? We know what we want. So it is time to do that exploration, to do that figuring out on your own, to touch, to, explore. To do that exploration, and then bring that into, with another partner, because again, I I completely agree, because I've seen that and I've noticed it, to where when you not just have that desire, but just have that ability to be so, and I'll use your words, turned on in so many ways, in where your perception, or you just like the aura, it just kind of opens up and you're seeing things for the first time. And I know it sounds to some people a little bit of woo woo, but it's not, because when you have that ability to take in that sensory, the sensory of just that feeling, the opening the mind, the opening the senses, then everything around you kind of explodes even more. So it's just that understanding so I guess my question, in addition to this, is what would you, what kind of, I don't want to say tip, but what would you tell women over 40 that they can do to start their exploration?
Well, I think first and foremost, it needs to start with building a relationship with yourself, because there's no intimacy without trust and relation and love. And so it begins, we can't give it or receive it in a relationship, in our bodies, in any way with another human until we start with ourselves. So it is not, to me, just a sexual act and a sensual act as much as it starts with the brain, it starts with the soul. So it is amazing how this transmutes right into a cellular level and actually has the ability to change your nervous system. But every morning when I wake up, the very first thing I do is I go to the mirror. I make eye contact with myself, because here's the thing. If I turn on my phone first, or I start consuming messages in a world that says that I am an old hag now, that is what will set the tone for my day. So I take radical responsibility for the thoughts that go into my mind. And I have really squeaky clean energy about what I think. And I'm very particular, even on social media, like who I follow. I'm very, I keep because I have so much respect for myself, I keep a really beautiful lens through which I take in information, because like anything, like I'm only going to feed my soul and my brain beautiful things, because that's what I believe I'm worthy of. I don't have time for like reality TV shows or all these like contouring, your face to look younger bullshit. I have no time for it. So I don't take those messages in. So what I do is I go to the mirror every morning before I even brush my teeth, before I do anything. I look right at myself. I pause and I just have a moment of wonder. And I look at myself and I say, "Good morning, Queen. I love you. You are a goddamn miracle." And I hold my eye contact and I let myself feel the power of being alive, of how amazing it is to be here in this moment. And when I set my tone that way, do you know, like to walk out and make my coffee, to see my husband, to see my clients, and I start with that energy the whole entire day. It does not mean bad things don't happen. It doesn't mean my heart doesn't break. It doesn't mean one of my kids don't give me a run for my money. All life still happens, but it's in a context and a tone of this like really like yummy, delicious queen energy where anything is possible. And then I feel that in my body. I move that all day that way. It changes everything. It just sets like this, people are like, "Amanda, you're oozing sensuality." Like being in a room with you, I feel it. I could feel it next to you. It's an art form that I'm not actually trying. It just starts with the way I speak to myself. It starts with the way I care for myself, the way I respect myself, the way I see what it means to be a woman in this age, instead of running around like, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed. I better go. Like, I got to put the Botox and I got to color my hair. I can't believe this is happening." I'm like, shoulders back, head straight, eyes out in front, looking at everybody that I meet. And I move through the world with that kind of power. And that's available to every single woman if she chooses to be, but you have to be willing. Like this doesn't come for free. This kind of confidence, this kind of sensuality doesn't come without doing the work that lives underneath it. Because I could have very easily been the woman who got on the train of like, "Oh, I'm going to start Botox in my late 30s. Because I hear so many women saying it's preventative. I even have my daughter who's in college saying her friends are starting it in their 20s. And I'm like, when I hear girls say it's preventative, I'm like, preventative of what, sweetheart?
Yeah.
Preventative of aging? Because there ain't nothing stopping that. And I think it's a spiritual act to age. I don't want to deny the reality of what's happening in the mirror. I want to see it. I want to honor it. And I already, one thing I would say to listeners too, that I take a lot of my clients through, we spend so much of our lives imagining what you'll be like in our 20s, what we'll be like in our 30s and in our 40s, and planning all these different decades of our life. One thing I don't find that we ever do, we don't envision ourselves when we're 80, 90, 100 years old. And so I take my clients through these exercises of envisioning that beautiful, wise crone. What does she look like? What would I learn from her? And we do it. It is so powerful because women stop dreaming about who they're becoming. And they just look at it as a downhill like slide from here. And so I help them set up this energy of like, what is the woman that you are becoming? And it's so incredibly powerful and beautiful.
Yes. There are so many things I need to say about this. So I thank you for explaining that. And what a great tip. I think that is probably the best tip I've ever received in terms of confidence, right? Because I hear a lot about, it sounds, you bring in boundaries, right? Don't look at your phone, don't look at the messages, as well as mental thinking, or, I don't want to say positive thinking, but just all the mental images, the mental thinking that we talk to ourselves, the trash that we talk to ourselves about. So it just sounds like, again, it's what I've been talking about a lot. It's the boundaries that we need to get rid of, or, cut off, because that it's no longer serving us, right? Mm-mm. It's the talking, I am beautiful. I am, I am, like you said, I'm a goddamn miracle. Things are, it's also the gratitude, I think, in our lives too. It is, I am grateful for having 10 gray hairs. I am grateful for having crow's eyes. I'm grateful for getting older. So I think all of those, we do have to, day in and day out, remember to keep doing it, to keep living that, to keep going like that. Because for me, what it seems like is when you do that, you become beautiful.
Yes.
Right? You become beautiful when you tell yourself trash, when you down talk yourself, when you are really just negative, then that's when you become ugly.
True.
I don't mean that to be mean or anything, but it is kind of like, if you want to be the woman, in your 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s and 90s, and I'll go back to that in a second. But even if you want to be that woman, what do you think is going to happen? Okay, let's bring it down to where I'm at now in terms of health, right? In terms of, my functional medicine background. When you negatively talk to yourself day in and day out, and trash talk, and, listen to the other people, that affects your health.
Absolutely.
And that ages you even faster.
Absolutely.
So, wouldn't it make sense?
Yes.
To do the mirror trick, the tip, and just go to the mirror every morning. You could be disheveled, your hair is all over the place, your breath stinks of whatever, but just honoring yourself, honoring who you are as a woman and as an aging woman. So that is the the message I love that you're speaking. So thank you.
You're so welcome.
Definitely want to get to the 80s, 90s. Interesting enough, I was at the gym, when was it, a few weeks ago, and I was just imagining myself being 80 years old and still crushing it at the gym.
Yes.
So it's just, and that's what we have to think about. That is what we have to think about is, okay, I'm not going to be 80 years old and I love my mom, and my dad unfortunately passed, but when he was 80, but I don't want to be that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be that 80, 90-year-old living, on machines, on medication, just, dreading the rest of my life.
No,
because that is no way to live.
No, not at all. And that doesn't start what you're saying essentially is that doesn't start when we're 79 and a half.
Right.
That mentality and that way of thinking, because like you said, there was that study by that Japanese doctor, I believe it was it water, right? It was like water in two separate jars where where they spoke to the water in one jar beautifully, lovingly. And then the other water, they spoke to it like really nasty and negatively. And then under a microscope, it appeared literally the water that they spoke beautifully to was these beautiful formations. Yeah. And then the water that was spoke to negatively was really jagged and harsh. So we are made up of 80% water. So if we are messaging ourselves negatively all day, you can imagine what shows up. My son he's 21, and he took me to a wine bar. a couple of like 2 months ago here in Miami to meet a whole bunch of his female friends, these new female friends. There were about 15 of them. And we were outside, obviously we come into this like back patio area and they all stand up to say hello. And then I sit down next to him and they're all like looking down and like whispering. And one of them I made eye contact with and I just smiled and she said, "We can't believe you're his mom," because they all have moms around the similar age. And I said, "What do you mean you can't believe it? Of course I am." And they said, they all stand up, they all come and form a circle around me and my son. And they said, you're so glowing. Tell us your skincare routine. And I thought, wow, that's the only frame of reference we have. That if a woman is glowing and radiating, it must be the cream she puts on her face. And I said, come close, girls, because what I'm about to share with you is something you've probably never heard before. I don't have a skincare routine. I have a soul care routine. Let me tell you what that is. And for the next 3 hours, they got their phones out. They were typing in everything I said because some of them were recording me, because that is a conversation we are not having with girls in their 20s. We are not telling them how to care for their souls exquisitely. We are telling them to run and get preventative Botox, to make sure you look a certain way, starve yourself, make sure your ass is tight and your eyebrows are thick. And that's why those girls grow up to be so confused, because they're most likely even watching moms who are sending that message to them. I know moms who take their daughters on their 18th birthday for their first lip injection. That is scandalous.
Oh,
it is absolutely scandalous. And I just can't stand by and watch it happen anymore. This is why I speak everywhere, anywhere that I go, whether I'm down on the beach, whether I'm in the supermarket, whether I'm on a podcast or with my own clients. Like, I will speak this until the end. We have to change this. It's insulting to me, actually, that we are in this place of being so objectified. And I'm not blaming the patriarchy at all anymore. I'm saying women, if we keep opening our wallets, if we keep believing and buying into this limited, insulting storyline, we only have ourselves to blame.
Yeah.
This is our own internalized misogyny. This is the work we have to do. So until we change it and we have higher expectations of what it means, because every man that comes up to me about my hair, they're like, oh my God, it's so gorgeous. Oh my God, it's so powerful. Every woman who comes up to me says things like, my God, you're so brave. I could never do that. And I say, I think brave is when you've battled 2 rounds of cancer and survived. I think brave is when your child dies in a car accident and you decide to get up the next morning. Because I have friends who are going through both of those same situations. The fact we would call a woman who doesn't color her hair brave is terrifying.
That's a bad message. That sends a really horrible message. Yeah, it's out there. It's the marketing, and the marketing filters down to the women, and the women buy into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I live in a community who, I mean, it's not as bad here, but you know, I think the more out of touch they are with reality, you know, the more they're in their bubble, and the more that, you know, people, it is to them a game of, I need to look 20 years old for the rest of my life. And who knows the whole backstory of that reasoning, because it could be, you know, in not only competition, but it could be, you know, to keep their spouse. It could be, you know, because they're afraid of losing who they are when they don't even know who they are.
Yeah.
So
they've built a whole storyline. It's all a big facade. It's so exhausting. I know when the pandemic happened, one of my neighbors owns like 7 med spas. And she said, you cannot believe, when the pandemic was beginning, women in full blown panic attacks and hysteria on the phone, that they were due for their next round of filler or Botox. And they could, because she was calling and saying all the appointments are indefinitely canceled. These women were going crazy. They were willing to pay her cash under the table for her to open up like a back door and sneak them in. I mean, that's a problem. And one woman actually said to her, my husband's not ever seen my actual face in 10 years.
Oh God.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this podcast is for. And that's, I'm sure you're on, you know, there's so many other podcasts speaking the same language. That is why you have to get that message out. That is why, you know, we're doing what we're doing. right?
That's right.
To squash that, to tell them, no, that's not right. That's not right.
You know, Elizabeth, you said, like, I wonder why. We'll never know the backstory for each individual woman, why she's doing what she's doing, right? To look 20 forever, look frozen in time. I think ultimately at the core of it for every single woman in one flavor or another is really about wanting to be loved.
Yeah.
And feeling like I'm only worthy if I look a certain way, because that's what the culture, that's what the world has told me. I've been bred on that message. I've been drinking that Kool-Aid since I was about 8. Mm-hmm. Everything I see or watch, even from the Disney shows, tells me I need to look a certain way to be loved. Yeah. And I think at the core, even unconsciously for so many women, is I don't want to be abandoned. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to not be loved. Yeah. So if we can just change the storyline of what it looks like to be loved for our power, to be loved for that beauty from the soul that shines out, to be loved, to be these women who are leading generations. That to me is the most sexy, beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's like a piece of art in human form.
Yes. That is what we need to do, is change the narrative. Yeah. Change the narrative that's been bombarding us, right?
Yeah.
You know, you touched on gray hair, and I want to kind of bring it up because, and this is for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
I'm trying to grow my gray hair out, and I'm all about, you know, organic living. So I don't put, you know, toxic chemicals. I have curly hair, so I don't try to put any toxic chemicals in my hair, you know. Can you give not only my listeners, but me a tip? I know, you know, and it's funny because people tell me, like, you don't have any. I'm like, okay, no, seriously, it's awesome. I'm so happy I do. But yes, I do. Look. Like,
yes.
Don't tell me. I don't care. Tell me I have some. I'm embracing it. I just need to know, you know, like some good tips to where it doesn't just seem so, you know, wiry or something like that. So can you just give me a tip of how you how your transition into gray hair was? Because it's beautiful. Seriously, like, it is beautiful.
Thank you. I just, you know, I've heard people say, I'm trying to go gray. I'm like, well,
you are gray.
You just do it. You just like, let it happen. So for me, it was very exciting. I looked at it like there would be so many mornings where I would be pulling it apart. And there's like one really white strand here that's covered up right now, but I'd be like looking and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this new pattern. Oh my gosh, look at this. Or I'd get the mirror behind me. So I did it in a way that I was like treasure hunting for like the silver, sparkly, like beautiful crown. And I see it as, I have this, it's really hard to articulate. I've tried to articulate this before, but I have this sense when I'm in the world, some of them that are really spirally and like little antennas and want to do their own thing. I have this sense when I'm in the world that I'm moving around the world, and I have a lot of imagery in my life. I have a lot of fun with my thoughts. And I have this feeling like I'm moving through the world, and those are like those little spirally ones that are coming in are my antenna, my energetic antenna in the world, signaling to all the other women in the world that this is okay. Don't be afraid. This is our wisdom. This is my crown of wisdom. I feel like this gray hair, I walk into a room and I'm already a revolution. A woman who can age and do it proudly and in open and not hide or feel ashamed is, in our world, in our culture, a walking revolution. So I don't even try to tame them. I see them as like, you know, my husband and I went on a sexy date last night, and we're in the elevator going down. The elevator is all mirrored. And I look at them and I literally, there were like 3 of them that were really coming in hardcore last night. And they're like sticking straight up. And I look at them and I literally smile. I'm like, welcome. Aww. Like, oh, there you are. More of you.
Yeah.
It's literally anything, Elizabeth, is possible. It's all in how we speak to ourselves. It's all in what we decide. What story are we going to anchor in? Am I going to anchor in, oh, God, there's another gray hair. I got to do something about that. Or are we going to be like, oh, there's another one. Look at how it's, you know, and also because they're a little bit unruly when they're first coming in, the new ones, I kind of think it represents my personality.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm a little unruly. I'm out there in the world, stirring up the pot, saying all the things. I'm like, that makes sense that those grays would be unruly till it's a representation of what I'm doing in the world.
Yeah.
You know, I'm saying the hard things. I'm going into the conversations that most people are not willing to have. So it feels like a representation of my authenticity.
Oh gosh, love it. I'm taking it with me.
Good, good.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. That is beautiful. It is a beautiful way to look at, you know, things that are natural, what's happening naturally. Like, why are we wanting to change natural, our human being, our innate being, something that's natural? Why do we want to change?
Because you wouldn't go into the forest and like analyze a tree or a sunrise and be like, oh gosh, it would just be so much better if that one branch was different.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, look at that. I wonder what the story is there.
Nice correlation. We are nature. We are nature. Yes. Yes. There's something I was going to say and I completely forgot. Anyway, it'll come. But so I want to actually touch on your podcast. Mm-hmm. So you have a beautiful, beautiful podcast. I listened to a few episodes. I'm going to be listening to them all. But can you tell us a little bit about your podcast, your coaching, what's going on in your life right now?
Yes. I started that podcast, July will be a year, and I started Revolutionizing Midlife, which is the name of it, because I really wanted to have these types of conversations. I wanted to have bigger, more expansive, more beautiful conversations about what it means to be in midlife. So I talked to, some of them are solo episodes, but the majority of them, I have guests on who are GYNs. I have sex experts. I have anti-racism experts. I have so many different types of women on where we talk about bigger, more beautiful ways of even thinking in this time in our lives, because I think if we don't start having those kinds of conversations, there's no opportunity for it to be different. I was not finding these conversations anywhere. I really, as I was coming into my early 40s, I really wanted an icon. I really wanted a woman that I could like kind of follow and admire, so a woman who'd gone before me. And I was really struggling. Of course there's Gloria Steinem and she swings really feminist. And while I am definitely a feminist, I also love like men and all of that. So I was really struggling to find a woman. I love Mama Gina very much, who's Regina Thomas Shower, who wrote the book Pussy. But I was really wanting a woman who was really talking about midlife and beyond, because I feel like everyone's kind of skirting around that. So I just decided, well, Amanda, you can't find her, so just become her. Just lead. And I had a client actually leave me a message this morning. I've had a lot of women in their mid-30s start reaching out to me saying, I don't want to wait until I'm 40 to work with you. I want to start setting the foundation now, because everyone around me is having a very different conversation. And your spaces are so uplifting and beautiful for women. I want to be in it now. And one of my clients left me a message this morning. It was so beautiful. And she was crying. And she said, and she's in her 30s. And she said, Amanda, I feel like you are this woman standing there with this beautiful candle in your hand. And I'm on the path distant from it. And I'm walking ever so slowly. Your words, your balm, your teachings, I'm walking closer and closer to the truth and to the light. And you're just standing there, grounded and reminding all women who they were always meant to be. And I thought there could probably be no more beautiful reflection back to what I feel like this work is. I think it really is a bringing women back home. I always tell my clients, there's this sense of, we knew who we were at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. Our little spirits, and our ability to like anything was possible. And then we started to notice that the world didn't like things about us, that we were too loud, we were too fat, we were too tall, we were too short, we were too greasy, we were too annoying, we were too dirty, we were too whatever. So we started becoming less and less of our authentic selves. We kept putting it in smaller and smaller boxes until we couldn't even find ourselves anymore. And my work, if I were to try to explain a story in it, it would be, I say to my women on the very first night of our mastermind, this next 6 months is going to be us with a lantern. We're in the dark forest and we all have our lanterns, and we're going to walk together back to the little girls that we left. decades ago. We're going back to get her. We're reclaiming her spirit, her energy, her fire before the world told her to stop. So we're going home to get her because we deep down, she's still in there. And so how do we, like, I have one woman who's like, she loved to dance. And then eventually she got out of dance because she was too big. And now she's opening a dance studio as a woman in her late 50s. Like, there was a woman who liked to write and her teacher ripped up her paper and told her she was a terrible writer. She just wrote a book. Like, we are going back home to claim everything that we always were. That's actually what living is. That's what being turned on for life is all about. But nobody is showing women how to do this. I don't even think people know how to have these conversations. So I will spend even the day that I am dying still talking about this because I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a more beautiful way for my daughter and for my sons. And I want them to be proud of the work that I put in the world.
And then to lead with that as well, right? To emulate it, and to be the, I don't want to say shadows, but just be those that carry that on.
Yes.
So that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. Yes, everybody listen to the podcast. And so then where else can people find you outside of listening to your podcast? How can people get in touch with you if they want coaching, all of that, social media, all of that stuff?
Yeah. So social media, I'm at Revolutionizing Midlife. And my website is Amanda Hanson, HANSON.com. And all my programs, everything is on there. But Instagram, I'm also on Facebook at Revolutionizing Midlife, but Instagram is kind of my favorite place to be.
Same here.
Yeah.
Nice. I will be sure to, link that up all in that, in the show notes. So people just, click on it and they're, direct to you. So
thank you so much.
First, before I get to the last question, I want to acknowledge you, Amanda. This is such a pleasurable conversation, pun intended. I don't want to, I can go on and on and on and talk about all of being a woman in midlife, just asking and those questions, those hard questions, and getting those hard answers, getting the easy answers, really, because they're answers that we already know. It's just, we need to open up and listen to them more. And they're out there. So I want to acknowledge you for doing the work that so many of us need in this world. So thank you. I'll definitely be reaching out to you outside of this, so be on the lookout. But thank you. Yes, that's all and I also want to acknowledge, thank you for being on this podcast, for sharing with my listeners who you are, what's your message that we all need to hear, and just for being you. So
thank you so much, Elizabeth. It really is my honor to be here.
Nice. Well, last question is, do you have a favorite quote or any words of inspiration you wanted to leave us with today?
I have many favorite quotes, but I think one that I go back to regularly is one by Eleanor Roosevelt. And she says, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent."
Yep. I heard that before. And I every so often say that to myself too. When I say, you make me feel this way, you make me think this way, to somebody else, I always go back and I think about that quote, or in general, like, no, I can only make myself feel that way.
Yes.
So thank you. That is a beautiful way to tie up this bow and end this perfect podcast episode. Thank you so much, Amanda. And we'll talk again.
Thank you so much.